be invited, or maybe you're going to want to invite someone to a festive occasion. But there are times that our inadequacy might keep us from either attending or creating a beautiful event that will make all our guests feel honored and welcome. Because after all, that's what a party is that you're throwing a party and you're inviting these people because you love them and you want to spend some time with them. Well, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed in what to do or what the proper etiquette is, wait no more, because today we're going to look at, probably, if you look at the longest etiquette expert in the United States, you will find Jacqueline Whitmore, who is not only a coach, but she also founded the Protocol School of West Palm. I think that Palm Beach. I'm sorry, Palm Beach. And she's an international etiquette expert, author, speaker. I met her at the etiquette conference and fell in love with her right away. And so today we're going to be talking about how to overcome some of those things that we feel a little bit like unsure about when it comes to proper etiquette. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I'm grateful that we're going to be able to have this conversation with Jacqueline. But before we do, I just want to share with you, if this is the first time that you are in the classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Like I said, I met Jacqueline at the Etiquette Expert Conference, and I learned so much, things I didn't know I didn't know. So I thought, you know what? We need to become more polished. No, we don't need anything. We get to become more polished. And I am excited because Jacqueline is here to do just that. Welcome, Jacqueline, to the classroom.
Hello, Lily. Welcome, welcome. Thank you.
You're the one that's usually interviewing other people, so it's you're on the other side. And one of the things that you did that I told you that I loved that you did in the etiquette conference is that you prepared someone, an etiquette expert that wants to be an etiquette expert, and how to be able to conduct themselves in the media. So you did a phenomenal job. And all of us can use this kind of polishing. So share a little bit about your background and what led you to embrace etiquette, this becoming an etiquette expert.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I am an etiquette expert, and many people will say, "What does that mean?" So when you say etiquette, when I say etiquette, usually people think about knives and forks and white party gloves and party manners, but I go a lot deeper than that. I work with clients from all over the world, and I teach them how to polish their personal brands. I teach them how to communicate more effectively in person and online, whether it's through email or text message or DMs or social media. I also teach people how to look their very best, how to suit up for success, how to deal with persons of different cultures. So the word etiquette is so much wider than most people realize. But what I really teach is how to become more mindful of how your behavior affects other people. And that's what my definition of etiquette really is. So, I mean, I can go back in time and tell you what I wanted to be when I grew up or what I went to school for, but I don't know how far back you want me to go.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, I know that from meeting you at the etiquette conference that you wanted to be an anchor woman, right? And that's
I
what you went to
did.
school. That's what you went to school for. But I
Mhm.
believe that what you're doing is even more supportive of what, what we originally think that we're going to do when we grow up, sometimes is even better. And I really love that what you're doing in this role, because you can do whatever you want. You've been on the other side too. You've been on weren't you on no, it wasn't Oprah. What was some of the bigger shows that you've been on?
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that. I have been on uh, most all the TV networks, including CNN and Fox News and CNBC and HLN. And that's something that really comes naturally to me because, as you said, I did go to college to become an anchor person, but I got my degree in broadcasting and journalism and decided to take a turn and go into the hospitality industry instead.
Mhm.
And we never know where life is going to take us. We think we want to do one thing, and then it takes us in another direction. And never in my wildest dreams did I think I would ever become an etiquette expert. Who knew there was such a profession until I took my first etiquette class when I was in my late 20s
Yeah.
at a hotel where I was working. I was working at the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. And when I was hired as the assistant director of public relations, and it was a dream job. I was able to work with people from all over the world, reporters from all over the world, and attend fancy galas. And for a small town girl who grew up in Central Florida in the middle of orange groves, this job was a dream come true. But to make a long story short, the Breakers was also famous for their etiquette camp for kids, which we put on every single summer. We had a culinary camp, we had an etiquette camp, we had a money management camp, all these essential things that I think children need. So when I came on board, I was responsible for hiring the etiquette teacher. And I found a woman who lived in Washington, D.C. She had a very famous school. She came down to the Breakers and she taught 4 summers in a row. And the first summer she was there, she said to me, "Why don't we put together an etiquette camp for adults?" And I thought, that's a great idea. I can help you with that. And being the curious person that I am, I attended that class. I had
Okay.
never taken an etiquette class in my life, but I love anything to do with self-improvement and building confidence. And so I took the course more for myself than anything else. And the teacher, decided to approach me after the camp was over. It was a 5-day camp. And she said, you could make extra money teaching etiquette on the side. So she was the angel who planted the seed in my brain. And I believe there are people in our lives that tell us things or suggest things. And if we only listen, we might get a bright idea. And I ended up going to her school in Washington, D.C. and getting a certification and teaching etiquette in my spare time until I left the Breakers. And then I made it a full-time job.
Wow, interestingly enough, until I met Jackie Vernon Thompson, and that's how we met through her. Until I met her, I really hadn't thought of etiquette. Now, I grew up being taught proper manners, but I never really thought of etiquette as a protocol, as something that we should all have. And the meaning of etiquette is making the other person feel comfortable as well. I didn't even think of any of that until I had Jackie on my show. And she said that she was going to be doing a conference and she wondered if I could be a speaker. And so when I accepted the invitation to do that, and I had shared it with Robert, my husband, he said, "Well, are you concerned about your talk and what you're going to be talking about?" I said, "No, I'm just concerned about eating with all these experts." It's like, because that's the thing. I see people with no table manners, but then somebody might see me with not as much table manners as they have. And that really made me curious as to, okay, what is proper etiquette? And I just like polished myself up again because I knew that it is very important for us to be, I don't know, have proper manners and make the other person feel comfortable. So let's talk about the holidays. There's a lot of holiday parties, and I've attended parties where people are asked to dress nicely, but some people show up in shorts or some people show up in different ways because that's who they are. So let's talk about, maybe you as the person who is creating the event, what are the things that you can do to make your guests feel comfortable? or aware of what is expected of them?
Mhm. If I'm creating an event, I always want to keep my guests in mind. That's first and foremost. So you start with the food because everyone loves to eat at a party. So you start with the food and you want to think about the different types of people who will be attending and what will they enjoy eating. You have to decide, are you going to provide the food or are you going to ask your guests to bring a covered dish? And I'm finding more and more people or hosts are asking their guests to bring their favorite dish or dessert because it's a wonderful contribution and everyone gets to eat something homemade or not so homemade from someone else. So I also think that it's important to consider the guest list. I did an interview yesterday with marthastewart.com and they were talking about this exact same subject.
Mm.
And when you're putting together your guest list, you don't have to invite everyone you know. It might be a special holiday party for just your neighbors. It might be a special holiday party for just your closest friends, or maybe your coworkers. So you want to put like-minded people together, and you can have several small parties, or you can have one big party, but it all depends on your budget. It all depends on your resources, your time, your energy, that sort of thing. So I think what I'm finding, especially after COVID, is that people are keeping their parties a little bit more intimate. And that makes things a lot more special when you have like a sit down dinner party, or even if it's an open house where there's food and there's music. You have to think of the decorations. You have to think about so many things when you're planning a party. So I think first and foremost, for my suggestion would be, what's the mood going to be like? Are you going to have music? Are you going to have a band? Are you going to have just a piano player? Are you going to have the stereo playing in the background? Or what kind of music are you going to have? What kind of food are you going to serve? And who are you going to be serving? And then you have to decide the formality of the party. If the party is very formal, you might want to think about the invitations going out in the mail versus an evite. So there's just so many moving parts to putting something like that together, but it doesn't have to be difficult. I know people in the Gen Zs, they throw a party together in 24 hours. Come over, we're having a bash. Whereas my generation, we put, well, I won't say everybody in my generation, but I tend to put a little bit more thought into my planning and processes.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. So you as the host are creating the atmosphere. You're creating the music and what's going to be the menu and decorations. You're doing all of that. In the meantime, you'll invite people that you would love to have with you, and some of them don't even acknowledge the invitation. So how do you as a hostess deal with people that haven't RSVP'd?
Well, I suggest putting an RSVP on the invitation, or at
Yeah.
least letting people know, respond by,
Yeah.
because that's common courtesy,
Mhm.
especially when food is involved. The host wants to know how much to purchase, how much um, alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. And that was just another thought that came into my mind. Provide both, because not every guest
That's
drinks
true.
wine. Not
And you
every
don't want to stumble. You don't want to cause somebody to stumble too that's been trying to go dry or sober.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So have a variety. So I would suggest having a date for people to reply. RSVP means Respondez-vous vous plaît, which is French for please reply. And if you find that your guests are not replying by that date, then you have to make phone calls or send text messages. I'd love for you to attend. I'm not sure if the invitation got lost in the mail. Will you and Bob be coming to the party?
So it's okay for the host to contact the guest and say, "Hey, you haven't RSVP'd. Are you planning on coming? We just want to make sure we have enough food and fun, for you." So that's okay.
Yes,
That's proper etiquette.
absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, what isn't proper etiquette is for the guest to not reply. So let's talk about, as the receiver of the invitation, what should the person do once they receive that invitation?
The receiver should reply as soon as possible, and note on find out if you can bring a guest or not. If it says Lily McDermott and guest, or Mr. and Mrs., then it means you can certainly bring your spouse or your partner or your significant other. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can bring your children. If you're in doubt of who to bring, then pick up the phone or text the host and just say, is this an adults only party, or may I bring a guest? Or, hey, my sister's visiting from out of town. Would it be okay if she comes along with me? So that's really first and foremost. You want to make sure that you follow the host's rules. You respond in time, plenty of time for that person to accommodate you and your guest, and just don't bring someone without asking permission.
Well, okay, so that's all well and good, and I think that that's a wonderful way to do it. However, on the other side, the host has kind of like invited, they have made that invitation to whatever people is supposed to be there. I just recently found myself in a situation where I was invited to a nice gathering, but I had guests staying at the house. I didn't realize the two had kind of merged. And instead of asking the hostess, I said that I am so sorry that I realize, and I'm not going to put that pressure on them, but I'm going to be having a guest at the house. And so their reply was, are you saying that if the guest can come, that you would be able to come? They didn't understand if I just wasn't going to come at all, or if the guest came, I could come. And I said, yes, if they could come, then I can. But I don't want to put the hostess in that place. She may have way too many people, and me not coming would be okay. But their reply was, if it had to do between you not coming or you bringing a guest, please come in with your guest. But I didn't. So did I worry too much about the hostess and putting them on the spot to say yes, that you can bring somebody?
I think it depends on the type of party. Etiquette is situational. So what might be right for me might not be right for you or someone else. So everything is situational. So if it was a sit down dinner with her closest friends and you're bringing your two other guests or one other guest, that might have made things a little bit more awkward because she has just so much room at her dinner table. But if it's a big gathering in their backyard around the pool, one or two more guests aren't going to make that much of a difference.
Yeah. This was a nice situation. This was a nice gathering. And I've done gatherings, and I know how much money is spent in these gatherings. And that's why I love, and I tell people all the time, RSVP as soon as you can, because you might have the intention to RSVP, you put the invitation down, and then you don't even think about it. Then the RSVP date is passed, and now the host has to do more work. And so I just always think that, you get the invitation, look at your calendar, you can do it or you not can do it. You'll know right away if you can or cannot do it, and RSVP right away. I love my first person who RSVPs, because they're very I consider them very considerate, because they understand that it requires a lot to throw a gathering together, put it together, a gathering. And like you said, each situation is different. If I'm saying, hey, come on over, hey, my friend is over, can she come? Yeah, sure, come, bring her along. That is a totally different thing. So, but not if it's a sit down or a wedding or a more formal event. I just feel that if I ask, it's putting the host in that uncomfortable situation where they have to say no or yes, and I just don't want to put them that way. So maybe I put it too much into it, but I just didn't want to do that to that person, to have one more person at the dinner table. So
right. And if you're going to cancel, you need to cancel as soon as because you don't want to cancel 1 hour before, and then the host thinks to herself or himself, I could have invited somebody else. Now I'm going to have an empty seat. So on the flip side, we have to think about not only RSVPing, but if we're going to cancel or make other plans, we need to let that person know way ahead of time.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So now setting the table. Let's say this is going to be a sit down meal. When I just recently did a sit down meal, and it was amazing. Once my husband calculated how much, I had 12 people. It was 12 people total. We sat around the table together. Plus I hired a server. I hired somebody to help serve. And by the time we were done, my husband goes, "Do you realize you spent X amount of dollars per person?" And it can cost a lot of money. So that's why I always say, be kind to your hostess and RSVP as soon as you possibly can. But what if you cannot at the last minute because of illness? Some people show up sick.
Oh,
So let's talk about that when it comes to etiquette.
I think everybody would appreciate those sick people staying home. No one wants your illness at all. So
Yeah.
I would just be mindful of, if you're feeling ill or under the weather, let the host know ahead of time and say, "I'm really sorry." And one of the things that you can do, we haven't talked about this, and I'm sure you're going to go in this direction, but the gift giving,
Mhm.
you might want to say, "I can't be present, but I would like to send a small gift that you can put on your table. And every time you look at it, you'll think of me. So I will be there in spirit."
Mhm.
So a lot of people think about host gifts or hostess gifts. And one thing you can do is send flowers the day
Mhm.
before the event. You can send a centerpiece the day before, so it's right there on the table or in the living room. You can bring homemade jams or jellies or something from your hometown that your host can't get. I mean, you want to tailor the gift to that person's likes and desires.
You know what? That is something my parents taught me. You never visit a person, like, especially if it's the first time that you're going to their home and they're inviting you. You never show up without something, whether it's a bottle of wine, or it's flowers, or it's a little something in the home, a little gift. Is that something that I learned from my mom because that was my mom, or is that something that is a nice thing, or is it something that you should always do?
It's a very nice thing to do. And if you're being invited to someone's party, it's always nice to bring a little something with a card, just a little something. I have these lovely little gift tags that say "a gift from Jacqueline Whitmore," and I had them pre-printed, and I tie a ribbon around it because a
Nice.
lot of people will give you a host gift and there will be no card and you have no clue who gave it to you.
Yes.
But you mentioned wine, and if you bring a bottle of wine, don't expect the host to open it
Of course not. Yeah.
because it is a gift. You may say to yourself, "This person drinks cheap wine and I don't like what she serves." But if you're
Oh,
giving a
it's
bottle of
happened.
champagne or
Yeah.
wine, that is the host's prerogative to serve it or not, but that is a gift.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So there are gifts that you assume are going to be consumed at that point. Like, so for example, if you bring a little appetizer or a little dessert or something like that, I would think the hostess would put it out for other people to enjoy, as opposed to a
Yes.
bottle of wine. The bottle
Yes.
of wine, you may have the wine picked out. Someone like me, I am a wine snob. I like certain wines, and so I just make sure that I have the wines that I like. And if there's whites or reds or whatever, there's a full, alcoholic and non-alcoholic for people to enjoy as well. And so that's a great point. That's a great point. And one that I never know if I should open the bottle or not. Sometimes I just put it aside and just leave it for another day, or maybe inviting them back, or bring it back to the should I bring it back to their home if
I wouldn't do that. Um, I,
regifting? No.
I do give a lot of advice this time of year on regifting. And I will tell you, I'm going to be very honest. I have three three or four bottles in my refrigerator right now that were given to me last holiday season. And I'm not necessarily fond of those wines. Either they're too sweet or they're sparkling wines. So if I'm going to re-gift them, I better make sure that the expiration date is still good. But 9 times out of 10, I'll serve it at another party. I'll just make it available to other guests. But you definitely want to make sure that if you bring anything edible as a re-gift, that you check the expiration date.
Oh, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay, so now you've sent out the invitation and you're getting ready for this as the hostess. So this is something that I do. I like, because maybe I shouldn't even get into this, but when I throw a party, I always go back and forth. When people come to my home, everybody takes off their shoes. As a matter of fact, on the outside of my home, it says, if you're wearing shoes, you're overdressed. So people that come to my home, they know this already. And so they know they're going to be taking off their shoes to come over. But I've had situations where people refuse to do it. So
Mm.
I've got a text that I send out to anybody who's going to be coming to my home, letting them know that if they'd like to bring some indoor slippers or anything like that, that they're welcome to do that. Any other suggestions, any tips for a party that people are dressed up and now they're going to find out that they're going to take off their shoes?
Well, your house, your rules. And
Okay.
I think that it is perfectly fine to ask your guests to take off their shoes upon entering your home, especially in climates where the weather might not be quite as nice, like
Yeah.
Florida. We live in Florida, so it's sunny almost all year round. But I know a lot of people who live up north, they don't want people tracking mud
Mud.
and snow and so forth. So one of the things that I recommend is, if you want to make that a house rule, that just in case you have little disposable slippers that
Yeah,
you can
I
give your
do.
guests, or cute
Socks.
little booties or
Yes.
socks, and make it fun, make it cute, put them in a basket by your door. And people love that. I have been to Asia many times, and it is so acceptable to take your shoes off. And they always provide slippers when you walk in the door, and it is no big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And good. I'm glad to hear that. It's no big deal. I had a guest say they weren't going to take off their shoes because there was nothing wrong with their shoes. He even took off his shoes, licked the bottom of his shoe, just to prove to me that there was nothing wrong with the bottom of his shoes.
Oh my, I wonder if you ever invited him back.
I'm trying to remember, but no, it's not important. But anyway, people sometimes can get, so yes, I do have flip-flops. If people want to change their flip-flop, I even have shoe covers. They can cover their shoes. It doesn't look as attractive, but so that is a little quirkiness, because I really want my home to be, I don't want to bring all the toxins and the chemicals from outdoor. But that's something that I do. So next time whenever you come to my home, Jacqueline, you'll know that if you have your shoes on, you're overdressed. So now in a situation like that, people are coming over and now they're meeting people from different areas. Some people are polished and other people have no manners. For example, sitting at the table before the host sits. I had a couple come over, and by the time I was done serving, the couple that we were hosting were done with their food. And so let's talk about proper etiquette at the dinner table. And what should we wait for? Should there be any cues on the hostess, or should people just start munching and chowing down until their little heart's contentment has ended?
Well, you've had some very interesting guests at your home, I must say.
Yes.
I would say one thing to consider is, when guests come to your home, usually they I don't want to say expect, but usually I offer something to nibble on,
Yeah.
until all the guests trickle in. So it can be just nuts and chips sitting around in
Yeah,
bowls,
appetizers. Yeah. Yeah.
appetizers,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for dinner, no one should start eating until the host sits down. No one should start eating until everyone at the table has been served. So if someone sits down and starts eating right away, that's a clear indication that they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And you might, as a host, say something very kindly, or you might not. I guess it just depends on the situation. But You never want to make your guests feel uncomfortable.
Right.
You
Yeah.
don't want to call someone out and embarrass that person at all. You can pull that person aside or have a conversation after the party's over. But there are a lot of things that sometimes we just have to let go.
Yeah. 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 Those are things. And then when they notice that they've eaten and everybody else, there's some people that are waiting, other people are just, chowing down. I think that eventually that'll be a lesson for them. They'll learn, they'll see. Hopefully they'll see that you wait till the host to sit down and then everybody gets to dig in. Normally we say we're going to have a prayer, or there's going to be a prayer said. So usually people wait till after the prayer to eat. So that's a way that I've found that, people will hold off eating. But prayers are
Right, right.
retroactive for people that have already eaten. So
Well, there could be a prayer, there could be a toast to
Mhm.
welcome everyone. I mean, people just need to be more patient. But that made me think of one other thing. Sometimes guests are late. And let's say you do have a guest who is running late. Maybe it's car trouble or they're stuck in traffic or whatever. And you're having a sit down dinner. There is no need for you to hold that dinner if they're going to be 30 minutes late, unless, of course, you really want to. I would just go ahead and start the dinner. And then when they come in, they can start where you all have left off. In other words, if you've finished the soup or the salad and you're on the entree, just go ahead and serve them the entree, maybe the salad on the side. But don't sit there and put your other guests out because this one guest is late.
So this just happened just recently. And I asked my guests if they wanted to sit down and eat, and the other person was going to be a half an hour to 45 minutes late. Well, I did have appetizers. And so they said, no, it would be rude not to wait for them. So we waited. And when they said that they were with us, then we were around the table and we were getting ready to eat. So in that situation, consensus showed that they wanted to wait. So
Mhm.
so that's okay too.
Well, you did the right thing. You asked everyone.
Mhm.
And what are they going to say? No, let's not wait. I think the host has the last say.
Okay.
And if you know this person well and they're consistently late and they say 45 minutes and then it ends up being an hour and a half, then you've got a real problem on your
Totally
hands.
different situation.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. Okay. So now let's look at the table setting. With the hostess, they may decide that they want to set a beautiful table, but nobody pays attention to it because Generation Z doesn't know anything like that. They don't know how to compliment a table. Do you compliment the table? Do you compliment how much does the guest compliment the host? How much does the host make elaborate and expect for them to be acknowledged? I don't expect anything because I do it because I love setting up a beautiful table. But I've noticed that not many people acknowledge. Maybe they'll say it's a nice table, but most people may not notice. So when you're setting the table, how elaborate should the table be? The table settings, knives and forks and extras, like salad forks, spoons, soup spoons, dessert spoons. Should you just reserve that depending on the kind of party that this is?
It all depends on you. It all depends on your budget. It depends on what you have. I know a lot of people who don't want to spend a lot of money on big centerpieces. So they go out to their garden and cut bamboo, or they cut bougainvillea, or they might cut daisies or something and have some greenery from their garden. They might set up candles. Just make sure your candles are unscented because
Unscented,
the
yes.
scent competes. That's another thing with fragrant flowers like lilies, for example, stargazer lilies. They're extremely fragrant. That's one thing you definitely don't want to have on your table. Or anything, a lot of holiday centerpieces can be very fragrant. And you want to avoid that. So how elaborate should you be? That's completely up to you. But one thing that I do like and what I do recommend and what people normally do comment on are the little table favors. And for the holidays, you can do something cute, like you can go out and buy um, something at the dollar store, and set that at each person's table with their name on it. It could be something as simple as a snowman, and in the snowman's hands you can put a menu card, or you can put the guest's name on it, and that's something the guest can take home. Or something that you create, you make, maybe you sew or you crochet, or something individual that people can take. Another fun thing you can do is, we don't see a lot of this anymore, but when I go antiquing, I get these little tiny dishes, and in the dishes, I either put mixed nuts, or I might even put little colorful candies. And that seems to draw people's attention in. Um, People love to see their name on the table. They love to see anything that is out of the ordinary. And so if your dishes don't match, don't worry about it. If you don't have soup spoons, use a teaspoon, use whatever you have.
Good, good, very good. And buffet style also works well, where people pick up their utensils and they can just sit down. I love setting a table, especially if it's a nice event. I love putting I love name plates and name place settings, or whatever
Mhm,
you call it.
mhm.
And I love putting it, because sometimes people kind of like lose the pressure of, where do I sit? Where do I go? And so having their name on there, I think that adds a little bit more of a special touch to it. But I like what you were saying about party favors. So what are some other party favors? And I love that, going to the Dollar Tree, or doing something that can just be a little something to fix the table up and say, take this with you if you'd like, as a gift.
Oh,
So what are
sure.
some
I
other
mean,
things?
anything. I mean, you could make something. You could it could be, it's keeping with the theme.
Hmm.
Something small. You could go online, and orientaltrading.com
Uh-huh.
has all of these little trinkets that are just, they're not expensive at all. And you would be surprised how festive you can make your table by just putting little things out, from the leaves, like fall leaves that you've collected in your yard, or acorns, or pine cones. Some people, I have a friend who takes pine cones and she glues little googly eyes on them, and she goes to like a Hobby Lobby, and she finds these little decorations to put on the pine cones. It's just something simple.
How sweet is that? How sweet is that? So what are other things that we need to be mindful of when we are, during the holidays? What are some of the things that we can do to make the people we love, or even someone who's extended an invitation to us, feel more welcome, more special?
Oh my goodness, that is such a broad question. But what I recommend is that you need to stick with your budget. And I say that because times right now are especially tight for a lot of people. And I have a friend right now who is putting together a wedding for February. And she's trying to decide if she wants to have an open bar or not. Well, that is also something that you should ask yourself if you're planning a holiday party. That can get very expensive. So one of the things that I recommend is having a holiday punch, or a sangria, or something that is either alcoholic over here and non-alcoholic over here. And then people can BYOB if they want, and that's always fun for them to bring their favorite wine to share with friends. But it's really important, I think, to keep your budget in mind. And if you can't afford to have the entire neighborhood, that's okay. Just think about who is going to get along with who has what in common with whom. And really, the best parties involve good food, good fun, good music. And it doesn't have to be that elaborate or
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah. And at the McDermott household, there's always good dancing. So there's
Yes.
always dancing around. So, and I'm talking about an elaborate or a much nicer event where people come. But honestly, getting together and having everybody bring something just to have a place to sit. And it could be as simple as that. Like you were talking about Gen Z and how they could put a party together at no time. And some of those are fun too. Those, just come as you are, just bring whatever. Everybody just does, puts, everybody brings something for the feast, for the meal. And so those are fun too. So, it all depends. Like you said, the budget is very important. Never go beyond what your means are. And so, before we continue, because I'd love to continue with this conversation, I just want to talk about my website and where we can go for my website. You can go to whenyounneedafriend.com if you want to learn more about other ways that you could take ownership and responsibility for your life. Go to whenyounneedafriend.com. While you're there, please subscribe. Like and follow me on all social media, and just know that there's always something that's happening in the classroom, whether it's the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit, which is on February 3rd. And I hope that you will come for that, because we're going to have incredible speakers. We also have, you can go on whenyounneedafriend.com, check out all the different, now I really do want to talk about etiquette more, because, people feel uncomfortable if they go to an event and they don't know how to behave a certain way, and it's a little overwhelming. So I want all of us to learn and grow together. You can go check out my sponsors, my workshops, the Lilly approved products that you can get. Check them out. Just know that from head to toe, there are ways that you can heal your life, wear products, use products on your skin and your body that don't have any chemicals. So check them out as well. And then you could become an enrolled student in the classroom, whether it's $1,000 a month or $1 a month, whatever you can afford, whether it's your time, your talent, your treasure. All of it is welcome. Today we have Jackie Whitmore. She is with us in the classroom, and you can find her at etiquetteexpert.com. You must have had your website a long time ago when you can find etiquetteexpert.com. So how long have you been doing this? And we're really basically talking about a party and a holiday, gathering, but you do much more. If somebody's feeling like they're going to be traveling overseas, or they're going to a wedding and maybe it's a black tie event and they've never done that, how can someone use your services?
You're right, Lily. I've been doing this for 25 years.
Nice.
I founded the Protocol School of Palm Beach in 1998. I was laid off from the breakers. I came home that afternoon, and I had already started thinking about starting my own business and doing it on the side. And I have had that website for a very long time, and it has worked for me. If you Google Etiquette Expert, I come up in the top 1 or 2 in the search engine. So I'm very fortunate about that. But I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. My main bread and butter is corporate events, where I'll speak to different organizations or corporations or even university students about polishing their professionalism and enhancing and elevating their personal brand. So I have been doing this for so long that I've found different ways of making my revenue, making my mortgage payment doing this.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, what are some other things that people need to be mindful of when it comes to etiquette in a gathering? And I'll give you one example. We were at a wedding, and someone at our table was talking very, very loud while there was a while there was a toast. And so, in a situation like that, would you shush the person or ask them to please be quiet? And even if they don't pay attention, what are some of the things that we should know about proper etiquette when it comes to somebody speaking at a gathering?
It depends on the person you're shushing. If
That's
it's
true.
your spouse or a significant other, I would just say, honey, I give them the stink eye. But if it's a stranger or someone I don't know well, I might just say, Glenda, something like that,
Yeah.
just so that person knows, in a nice way, of course. But
Did you say Glenda?
I did.
Is
Why do
this
you know?
someone, is there
Did you
always a Glenda in a group?
know? Was that the person who was speaking very loudly at the party?
No, 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 no. I just thought, we don't want Glendas to think that we're accusing them of being speaking really
Oh,
loud.
no, no. I just think it's important to be mindful of our own behavior. And that's why etiquette is so important now more than ever, is because technology has made it more difficult for us to communicate. We seem to have our heads in our electronic devices at all times. We seem to be plugged in 24/7, and we forget that there are people around us. We forget those old-fashioned values and morals that our parents or grandparents once had. And it's it's the times now are so different. I mean, we live in a multicultural society, so the way in which we communicate with other cultures is different. We don't have a sense of neighborhood anymore because people tend to move every so often. My mom lived in the same house for 35, 40 years. I mean,
Mhm,
that's almost unheard of in this day and age. I
mhm.
also think that there's a breakdown of the family unit. Both parents have to work nowadays, and so we have children raising children. Etiquette is not taught in the school systems that much anymore, and there's just nowhere you can go to learn proper manners unless it's on YouTube or going to the library and reading a book. So it's so rare now to see someone who is, I mean, we know people who are kind, and that's wonderful. And I would rather sit next to someone who's kind, who doesn't know how to use a knife and fork because that person's kind, versus someone who has impeccable manners and that person is a jerk to the wait staff.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is I try to bring out the best in people, because we only know so much. But if we can heighten each other's awareness on how you can polish your brand just a little bit more, whether it's in your speaking or how you communicate in an email, or maybe dressing someone up just a tad to help build their confidence. That's really what it's all about, is being confident in a multitude of situations. And now that COVID is behind us, there's a whole new generation out there that's spent the last 3 years in their bedroom on being homeschooled or being taught on a computer. And these are the people who are being hired now
Mhm.
in corporations, and they don't know how to have face-to-face conversations
Yeah,
with other human beings.
they can't even look in the eye. That
No.
this eye contact thing. I just did an event, and one of the things that we did an exercise on eye contact to acknowledge our guest speakers. And it was I mean, people were bawling. They hadn't experienced that in a long time. Just looking at someone in the eyes and just not saying a word and acknowledging them. And that is such a beautiful gift. And even the speakers came to me afterwards and said, that was amazing. I've never experienced that before. And I think that we need to be aware that, just hugging someone, or just, looking at them in the eyes and seeing them, that's important. People sometimes where they have anxiety because maybe they were locked up for 3 years and they don't know how to interact now as an adult. Maybe they were a teenager, but now they're an adult and they don't know how to engage in a party. So let's talk about icebreakers and, conversation starters, as opposed to, hey, did you hear about the latest politics? So what are some great conversation starters that will make people feel at ease?
There are two topics that everyone likes to talk about. Well, we all know everyone likes to talk about themselves, but there are two topics that will stimulate any conversation. And the first one is food, talking about the food, or what is your favorite restaurant, or can you recommend a good restaurant in the area? And the other is food and travel. Travel is very near and dear to most people's hearts because either they've been somewhere, they want to go somewhere, or they dream of going somewhere. And travel and food are two of the easiest ways to spark a conversation. How do you know the host? Talking about your surroundings. Oh, isn't that a beautiful centerpiece? Coming prepared to a party with a few icebreakers. The more you know about a person, of course, the more you can talk to them. But you're
Mhm.
going to go to parties where you don't know a single soul in the room. So, what do you do? What do you say? Most people, their go to is, well, what do you do for a living? And that's all fine and good, but I think that's kind of boring. Instead, turn it around and say, if you weren't doing this, what you're doing for a living, what would you love to be doing?
Mhm.
And that way you're digging a little deeper and you're getting to see the real heart of the person because they're telling you something that means a lot to them instead of talking about surface things. And that's what I try to teach my students is getting to the heart of people and finding out what makes their hearts sing by digging in just a little bit deeper. And how do you do that at a dinner party? Well, it's by asking open-ended questions. It's
Mhm.
by listening and not
Mhm.
necessarily talking. Because if
Mhm.
you're the only one talking, what do people do? They tune out, right? They tune out.
Yeah.
So you want to think of a conversation like a tennis match. It goes both ways. So if someone asks you a question, you answer and say, well, how did you feel about that? We all want people to say, well, what do you think about that? What's your opinion on that?
Very nice. I really like that. I usually, when I go to a party, it's a little uncomfortable at the beginning because you may not know people there. You might know some people, but I don't like to gravitate to the people I know. I like to go to the people I don't know and say, well, how do you know the hostess? How do how did you meet? And I love getting the stories, because I mean, to me, that's my number one icebreaker if I don't know the person. And I love the suggestion about food and travel, and it doesn't have to be like, Europe, or it could be a hiking trip to, Mount Dora. It could be, it doesn't have to be very far. It could be anything in particular. Okay, so now the party is done, and the the people that have attended the party, I always love to do a thank you, like a thank you text, or thank you for inviting us. Some people have sent me a written thank you, which I think that's just so sweet to take the time to do that. So let's talk about thank yous, whether it's the hostess receiving a gift and acknowledging that gift, or the people who were at the party acknowledging the party. What's proper?
I think it's really important to say thank you to the host. And I always recommend saying thank you before you leave the party. Don't just ghost everybody and walk out the door without saying your goodbyes, at least to the host and hostess, letting them know you enjoyed the event. Thanks so much for inviting me. And then the next day, what you can do is you could either write a handwritten thank you note, or and which I think is warranted if the person has made a full-blown dinner party for everybody, or if it's just kind of an open house or something more casual, you can send a text, you can send them an email, just whatever you need to do to acknowledge your appreciation.
Very good, very good. So with that in mind, it's wonderful to for the hostess as well. I've received some hostess gifts, some beautiful hostess gifts, and so I usually, like, my mom used to say, you have 24 hours to contact the hostess and say thank you, acknowledge the party, acknowledge the event, thank them. And also, I just did a show the other day, letting people know that whenever, this is just me, anytime I'm invited to a party, I always ask if there's something I can bring, if there anything I can help with. Is that something that I do? Is that something that we should all do?
I think that is a very wise thing to do, is always ask, is there something I can bring? And if they say, just bring yourself, that's great. But I still bring a little host gift.
Yeah.
And also, if you want, you can offer to serve drinks. I might say, Glenda, may I help you serve drinks or
Glenda.
pass, or pass out? Or there's Glenda again.
First she was talking too loud. Now she's helping serve.
Right.
Yeah,
And she's helping to clean up too. So
oh yeah, cleanup is always a good thing.
yes.
That's the one thing that we usually offer to do before we leave a party, even if it's just a little bit before you go. But most people know that there's some people, like when we do a family gathering, they usually are the last ones to arrive and the first ones to go, so that they don't have to do any cleaning or any straightening up or any picking up. So that's just who people, some people are like that. But I'd like to encourage everybody this holiday season to just do something special. What would you do if you're going to a party, and all of a sudden you want the hostess to feel wonderful, or the host? What would you do?
Goodness. Everybody has their own love language.
I like that.
Some people's love language is words of affirmation or touch or gift giving. And if you don't know what their love language is, then maybe try all 5.
Every time you go to the party, right? You bring something new to the table. This has been a great conversation, Jacqueline. I've been looking forward to this day, because I think more and more we need to introduce just these nice protocols in lifestyles, just friendships. Sometimes we take our friends for granted and we don't realize or acknowledge the efforts that they go through. So I want to encourage all of you as you're listening to this. I know we talked about elaborate things, but you can also create a small event that everybody feels welcome. And I think that that's what you're saying, right, Jackie, is you want people that are in your home to just feel welcome.
That's right. And even if you don't want to host a party this year, that's okay. Maybe you and a friend can get together for lunch or for tea or for dinner. But this is the holiday. Don't stress yourself out. So many times I see people do way too much and spend way too much money. Just do what you can do and spend it with those you absolutely love.
That's right. It's not about money. It's about spending time. That's one of my love languages, is time. Time, quality time with people. So thank you so much, Jacqueline. Once again, her website is etiquetteexpert.com. She does coaching. And if you are in a situation where you want to up your game when it comes to making others feel welcome, this is the person. This is one of the people that I go to when I need to learn more about proper etiquette. So please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Jacqueline Whitmore wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert